I'm ready.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Deborah. Hi, everyone. It's Han Vivian again, and wishing you a beautiful day ahead. Please join us to welcome Deborah Crowe. Hi, Deborah.
Hi, Vivian.
How are you doing?
I'm doing great, thank
We're
you.
so hey, I hope we're so lucky to have you here and appreciate so much for spending your time with us in this Insight Sharing section. We are grateful to connect with you virtually, and we love to you, your work, and that would be the inspirational story for us here. I think to kick it off, would you please share with us a bit about this? And please just bring us back all the way how the journey and how your great work started.
Sure. I'm turning 56, Vivian. It's a long story, so you're the first to wish me an early happy birthday, so thank you for that. I was born and raised in Ontario, Canada. I lived in various rural communities, and my father was an entrepreneur, and he had great success. But looking back as an adult, what I didn't appreciate was that we were uprooted and moved almost every 2 to 3 years of our life. So we would just land somewhere, get into school, make new friends, get settled, and then we were moving again. And that went on all the way until I was done elementary school. And then we moved to the city that I live in now, which is London, Ontario, Canada. And our dad was really sick. But it afforded me, for the first time in my life, the ability to go to one school from start to finish, which was high school. What was really hard was I always felt like an outlier because I never landed and settled into a community growing up in those formidable years. And we moved from a small rural town to a large city. And that was emotionally really hard for me because I was used to being around all of the kids in a small town. And then I was chose to pick who I wanted to hang out with in high school. And I was just brought up to be everyone's friend. So it was really, really difficult. And then I finished high school and I was going to be an architect. And I went to the US to university, and I lived with a really lovely family, and I was their nanny. And 1 year in, my dad got sick, and then I had to move home. And I landed up caregiving for my dad, and then he passed away. So I was 21 years old. I didn't have a support system. So the day my dad died was really the birth date of me learning resilience in that moment in time. So I then went on, I had to go back to work, and I worked for 3 years, and I had 4 really awful bosses. And I was also heavily raised by my Irish Nana, and she taught me at the tender age of 8 or 9 to always be kind, always lead with my heart, lean into my faith, and that I'm never really alone. So I realized when I lost my last job that I didn't lose it because of who I was. One of the vice presidents took me for lunch, and he said, "You're losing your job today at 5." And I started to cry. I'm 24 years old. I just felt very, very lonely, and I thought, I'm working so hard. What am I doing wrong? And he said, "You're not losing your job because of you. You have a boss who doesn't see how to foster and mentor your leadership." And he said, "Go and start your business." So on May 30th, 1990, again, thank you for wishing me an early anniversary, I opened my business. I named it after my dad, and I've never looked back. And I went back to school. I finished my degree. I took a real interest in specialization in neuroscience, and I was a medical case manager for just over 20 years. And 12 years ago, I lost 5 executives who were on stress claims to cancer. And I believe, I like to use the phrase, growth comes from the valley, and the valley being a metaphor for when we're handed those difficult times, sometimes they're just a beautiful opportunity perhaps not presented in the greatest way. And when I sat with those 3 vice presidents and 2 C-suite leaders at the end of their life in hospice holding their hand, I realized all of the gifts and everything that I had been given had prepared me for that moment, because I was with my dad at the end of his life. So I was a caregiver, I was a hospice volunteer, I was a case manager, I had become a wife and a mother, and I kind of reminisced on all of the new titles that we get in life as we progress through life. And all of those executives said, you need to do something. And it was a joke, because no one ever calls me Deborah or Deb. They call me Deb Crowe, or they use my name as a verb and say, you need to Deb Crowe this. So at the end of life with those 5 executives, they all said the same 2 things for me. I didn't speak my truth. I tolerated a toxic culture. And I was really shooting for the top, that success, that proverbial ceiling that we wanted to hit. And what they realized at the end of life was that they jeopardized their health, their marriage, relationships with children and grandchildren. And they said, Deb, you need to Deb Crowe this. So I made a promise to them, and I talk about them every day, because I believe I landed up getting into coaching 12 years ago serendipitously. I realized I had been coaching people that had been injured or severely traumatized. I saw the worst of the worst, and it landed up preparing me for the best work I'm doing now, which is my legacy work. So my legacy work is keeping the legacy of those executives alive. So what I did was I realized I moved out of the generalist space of helping people who were sick or hurt, and I moved into the preventionist space to help those people get to where they want to get without jeopardizing health. So the serendipitous kind of full circle moment for me now on the doorstep of my 56th birthday is that I've lived such a beautiful life with my business. I've met some incredible people. I lost some incredible people, but it's prepared me to be a really heart-centered coach. It anchored me back to that conversation as a young girl of 8 or 9 years old with my Irish Nana. And leading with heart will never take you astray, because when you lead from your heart, you know who you are. You have a high level of equanimity and self-awareness. And when I know who I am and I'm coaching or leading, it makes me feel proud and that I'm honoring the legacy of those 5 executives. And I bring that mindset, like you talked about, every day of my life. I see limitless opportunities. I get to meet amazing people around the globe, like both of you. And to me, that's a life of richness. And that's kind of where I'm at right in this present moment with you today.
Wow. Thank you so much for sharing your journey in about 5 minutes to Vivi and I and the audience of the program. We're sorry for the loss of your father, who we believe is a big figure in your life at your age of 21 years old, and that that also push you on to doing beyond what you think you could be doing. So let us carry you further back to when you were younger, and then when you were young, and then you've been settled in one place, travel to the next place, and then resettle in, and then move in again. So the Deborah back then, what did you dream when you finish school, when you get out to life? That what would you be the one you be doing and becoming? Can you share with us that?
It's interesting. When I'm asked this question, I immediately go back. I can remember this vividly. I was 8 years old, and we lived on a farm, and we had a big barn, and behind the barn there was kind of like a bit of a hill with tall grass, and then like a man-made pond that we fished in. And I had this beautiful dog, German Shepherd. His name was Reuben. He was like my BFF, which we didn't say that then, but he really was. And I realized when I felt alone, I was never alone because I always had myself. And when I look back now, 40 some odd years later, I was embracing that I was outgoing and friendly, but I'm truly an introvert. I'm a deep thinker. I'm a creative thinker. And I would dream of teaching or working with people, speaking on a stage. And my mother wasn't a well woman, and she was extrinsically a good mother in the way that she provided for us, but she didn't give us the maternal emotional elements that you need as a child. And I'm the youngest of 5. And I dreamed of becoming the mother that I wanted to have, which I have fulfilled very, 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 very lovingly. And it's shown my kids, I have 2 girls, 2 daughters. It has shown my daughters that out of stress and abuse and just tumultuous times emotionally, you can always sink yourself back into your own resilience.
Wow, how beautiful it is at 8 years old, and then you have a dream of one day you become the mother that you would want to become for your children at the age of 8 years old. And this is amazing. I never heard anyone saying that. I heard about people want to be an astronaut, want to be a mermaid, want to be whatever, but not becoming a mother that they want to become. So I think you accomplished that beautifully, and then you're soon going to be a grandmother, aren't you? Right, so congratulations for that. We get back to you in July to say hello to your grandson, grandchild. Okay.
That would be lovely. I'm very excited to be a grandma. I had I had 2 nanas that were really lovely to me. So it's going to be my best role yet in life.
Now go back to your 24 years old time when you decided to you lost the job, you cried with your VP, and then he encouraged you to go out and do your own business, right? And then back then you were very young back then, and there's a if I were you in that situation, I might decided to go for another company looking for another job that maybe hopefully for I will have a better boss. But then you took a path that aren't to many people, and then having your own organization, having your own company after your father's name. Why did you do that, Deborah?
I didn't want to repeat the 3 years that I had giving somebody everything that I had to be told again, it's just not working out. And I thought the only way I'm going to get to make a difference in my own life and in this world, didn't know where I was going to go, what I was going to do. And I just leaned into my faith, and I made a list of a day in the life of me and what that would look like and what I enjoyed doing. And it was just a blessing. A headhunter called me, and they were looking for a consultant inside General Motors within my city who was self-employed and could set up an international office for the Australian Department of Defense. That was my first customer.
Wow. And then how's the journey happen after that? Can you share with us more on the journey?
It was amazing. I was up against 6 men for the role. And it was a technical role because I'm very proficient with software and hardware, and I'm all self-taught. And I was given a sheet from the colonel, and he said, "Do you know all of these programs, and can you do this job?" And in that moment, I thought back to the last conversation I had with my dad before he passed. And he said, "Don't you ever think that you can't do something." He said, "Never say no, say that you have working knowledge." And there were 2 programs on that list that I I didn't really know much of. And I said to the colonel, I feel very confident that I have proficiency in all of these. And I said, these last two, I'm not fully familiar. I have a working knowledge, but I'm a quick learner. And I know once I have exposure to these tools, I feel that I can do it. That landed me my first contract.
Wow. And then how everything leading to your journey as executive coaching? Can you share with that? Because the you
Sure.
started the executive coaching 12 years ago, and back then it's still quite new in the coaching space. Executive coaching is quite new. So how did you ended up into that space though?
So I case managed when I was working for the Australian government. It was a contract for, I have to think back in terms of my age. I was with them for 5 years. And there was 4 phases to the contract. They built all their light armored vehicles here in my city and then had them shipped back to Australia. And I finished the contract. And in that 5-year period, I returned to school while I was working for them. I finished my degree. I specialized in neuroscience and got married and finished the contract. And 2 weeks later, had our first daughter. So it was a busy 5 years. And then while I was knowing the end of that contract, I went back to finish because I wanted to work with people in the medical rehab sector. And I think my dad had a big part of that. And I still had my architectural schooling that I had done. My Irish Nana used to tell me that knowledge doesn't go bad. Sometimes we learn it and we have to put it on the shelf, but we know when to pull it back. So I landed up in the med rehab space, opened my own clinic, and I did that right up until 12 years ago. And when I was closing it and I had lost the 5 executives, I hired 2 coaches. I hired one coach to help me develop an exit strategy for my clinic because I had 4 staff. I wanted my staff to have enough time to look for another job. I needed to find other versions of me to look after all my patients and their family. And I knew that was going to take some time, and it did. It took almost a year. And then I needed a different coach to say, where do I go to from here? And that's when I realized at the end of that coaching, he helped me realize all the transferable skills that I was packing up in all of those years to bring into my next role and what that would be. He helped me realize that I had been coaching all along different age people in different sectors. And I really knew how to develop trust and rapport with executives. I love people. I'm very much, people think I'm an extrovert. I'm actually not. I'm an introvert, but I love intellectual, stimulating conversation. And I remember my coach looking at me and he said, there's only one place for you to transition. You need to be a coach. You need to work with executives. And then it brought me full circle again because I was going to honor the legacy of those 5 people. So their legacy, again, is now the work I'm doing at this age, which is my legacy work. So it's almost like a serendipitous full circle moment for me.
And what happened to executive when they get into the top ladder of their success though, Deborah? Why they get so lonely and stressed and that they need the services that you coming in and helping them though?
Well, think about it. You work your way up in a company. When you get to the top, where else is there to go? And think of the pressure and the amount of decisions and delegation that come at you, full flurry all day. Sometimes they have milliseconds, and they know that the people below them want their job.
Okay.
It's a tremendous amount of cognitive and emotional pressure. And a lot of leaders are very lonely because they don't have a lot of people in their circle of trust.
And then you say that we don't have to be perfect to be a caring, effective, and heart-centered leader, right? And how can we help those lonely leaders to, to really break the glass and starting to, really show their authentic self to the people, and having the people to accept them as who they really are, those if they've been in the shell for so long.
The best way to do that is to embrace who you are as an individual.
Mm.
And the way you do that is by honing your own self-awareness. Leaning in to say, if I was having a conversation, say Vivian was on my team, I could say to Vivian, these are my top 3 qualities today, just today, because tomorrow's different and yesterday's gone. Today, Vivian, I think my top 3 heart-centered leadership qualities are that I'm trustworthy, I'm approachable, and I'm an avid reader. And then have the opportunity to say, Vivian, do you want to know the quality I'm really working on? Mastering my own character. To have the courage and the vulnerability to say, I don't know the answer to that. What do you think we should do, Vivian? Leaders aren't meant to know everything. They're not Google. They're not artificial intelligence. They're human beings. So just because someone's at the top and they've worked their way to the top, they don't have all the answers. And I have seen some, like at a visceral level, I have seen some leaders that are so lonely at the top because they paid a price to get there. Whether it be their health or 1 or more failed marriages or a strange relationship with their children and grandchildren. And that is the biggest reason and motivator for me. And it's such a blessing. And I have so much fun helping these leaders kind of unpack how they got there, why they got there, and what they're looking for. Much like you brought me back to when I was 8 years old. Somewhere along their lineage of leadership, they lost their way. They lost their own dreams because they get caught into the systematic approach of leadership. And at the end of the day, yes, there's different business sectors, but we're all in the people business. And the definition of heart-centered leadership is honoring your connection with people. And what I mean by that is being present, listening, not looking for reciprocity because it's not transactional. The only thing that should have reciprocity is listening and an exchange of soft skills. That's when you know you're fully present.
Wow. Thanks for sharing, Deborah. I'm interested to know a lot more about you. So let me ask more questions about you, all right? A lot of my people in my networks are also introverts, okay? And some of them is really, really in the extreme introvert, personality. And for them, and when you say that your life going through a lot of resilience and being resilient through a lot of things that happen to you, and for an introvert person going through resilience is also challenging because it's hard for you to share with the people around you, hard for you to tell people about that. How did you go through the resilience? What happened back then?
You have to lean into your imperfection and know that it's okay to not be okay. We are allowed to feel and be every emotion. We're allowed to honor when we're sad, when we're mad, when we're disappointed, when we're angry. That's an opportunity for us to get quiet. And I love the word equanimity. When you can be imperfect and honor your own equanimity. Equanimity means mental calmness and composure. So imagine a world if we all were honest with ourselves and honored equanimity with everybody else in the world. We would have a world at peace.
Thank you for sharing the term equanimity. We've been hearing about that term really in the past couple of years, 3 or 4 years or so. But before that, I barely hear, in our, works or any publication mentioning anything about that word. So I think there's more and more people looking for mental calmness and composure. So I think that it really get us to feel the inner peace from the inside, so that we can build the strength and heading forward for more challenging. Uh, Deborah, I'm also interested to know, because you interest to become to learn about architect, but then when you had a chance to build your specialties, you actually build your expertise in neuroscience and then in medical rehabilitation, right? Why did you choose to study that field out of many fields that you can choose to be expert from?
I grew up with a corneal ulcer in my left eye.
Mm.
So for much of my childhood, from age 4 till high school, so 14, and then intermittently from 14 to age 21, my eye was patched. So it was a disability.
Oh, I'm sorry.
My Irish Nana had a disability, and some of my friends had disabilities. And then I landed up caregiving for my dad. And I felt this pull in my heart that I served that population so well. Because when you think about the psychosocial and the social economic people that we meet in our life, I am the same Deb Crowe, whether you have a disability or you're a CEO. I always show up with who I am.
Mm.
What your ability is, or your net worth, or your stature, it's irrelevant to me
Mm.
because I honor my connection with whoever I'm speaking with. So I've never seen people's disabilities. I would see the person. I would have a beautiful connection and conversation with that person. And the architect knowledge never went to waste because I worked with a lot of beautiful men and women who sustained spinal cord injuries, whether they were fully paralyzed or partially paralyzed. And when they returned from the hospital, their apartment or home had to be modified.
Mm.
And I remember sitting with some of the therapists and saying, this is really funny because I can look at architectural drawings. I understand what this individual needs now. And I would have these moments of kind of a silence and renewal going, okay, I see where this is supposed to show up now.
Mm.
And it's just been like this ongoing evolution from the beginning. And every time I was in the valley, whether, something greater than me pulled me in another direction, and I didn't always understand why, but I would lean in and accept it.
Mm.
And I'm also a yoga teacher, so I'm very much into meditation, and my word for this year is intention. And I think when we have intention in our day for everyone who crosses our path or whatever our daily goals will be, I never question it.
Mm.
So when people say, do you think it's a coincidence we met? I'm like, no, I don't. There's a reason. My Irish Nana used to say, there's a reason, a season, or a lesson.
Hope it is a season, right? And good lessons come out from every person that we are meeting with, and it's our great honors to meeting you and Deborah. Um, that's one word that you mentioned repeatedly, and that was this think. All right, and Vivian and I have been in the quest to help you, to understand how people are thinking, and why we're doing that is because we believe that our ability to think actually shrunk. It's not expanding, and then but it's declining. And each and every time that we got a chance to meet amazing individual like you are today, we would like to understand how is your thinking process, and so that if you can share with us, that's also is very beautiful for the audience to learn and then to re-examine how they think versus how you think, and then they can make they can make adjustment to the way that they think head on to the future. Can you share with that secret?
Absolutely. I don't think it's a secret. I think it's a practice. And think about, what all three of us did today. We got out of bed, we brushed our teeth, we had a shower. You have to make your habits of thinking part of your daily routine. And if you're heart-centered and you want to be a heart-centered leader, and we all are heart-centered leaders, we don't need a title, we don't need stature. When you put people first and you intrinsically think, you will never go wrong. Because it's not about us. So when I'm working with executives, just to kind of circle back and bring a previous question that you asked me into this one, a good leader speaks last. A good leader is silent, observant, and most teams, leaders will witness who their thought leaders are. And the thought leaders are usually the introverts. And they're usually not speaking. And they're easily picked out of a team. I'm a deep thinker. And I schedule time to think every day in my calendar. And I refer to that as white space. I make time to get outside and ground myself, even if I only can walk around the block. I like to do a longer walk. I like to ride my bike. And that brings me back to the 8-year-old girl who loved the country. I need to be outside, and I want to be outside. So when you can intrinsically think and put people first and remove the feeling of obligation. If you're waking up, kind of like you alluded to why you and Vivian started your show, was it's very easy to get succumbed by what's happening in the world with the events. So I keep abreast of the news, but I limit my time and I only look 3 times a week. The rest of the time, I give effort and energy back to myself, because the more I get back to myself, the better leader I am from yesterday. When I have time and silence to fall into equanimity to think, my dreams aren't catastrophic and they don't go off into a fantasy land. I dream about something and then I have the time to look at the behavior, to be disciplined, to create the structure to fulfill my goals. And I don't waver from that, and I don't get sucked into social media. I limit myself in what I do. So I do my posting on LinkedIn. That's my predominant platform. That's where I showcase my expertise. That's where I share. And I take pride in writing and being a creative, because I write all my own content. And I'm very proud of that, because then I'm sharing my voice, my viewpoint with you, my stories of how I got to where I am. And to me, I think that's the best way I can really show people who I am, by being myself continually every day, developing that idiosyncratic voice. So when you read something from me, you can look at Vivian and say, that really sounds like Deb.
Yep.
That being authentic and sincere, and that's my goal every day.
I read the post that you shared about Nancy, your the former boss that you had, and I quickly thought about how can those similar leaders, similar boss out there can read your post and think about the work they do, the impact they had on the people that they're responsible for, and could make a change to the way that they do. And then I think the workplace will be a lot better. The relationship that they have at work and at home will be a lot better also for themselves. So I admire the works that you do, and please keep on doing that. Deb Crowe, okay? That's what we will call you forward.
Absolutely.
Mm.
Deborah, I've been listening to your story, and I can see the caring inside of you to the people around, to the society, even when you were very young. So I think it is a pathway to create habit fighter. I can feel that caring through that observation. You coming up with that assessment. Would you please share with us a bit about that journey?
Sure. I didn't quite hear all of what Vivian said. Could you just repeat it for me?
It's about the habit fighter that you have. I love
Yes.
to hear me of that because I can link with the 80s or Deborah looking after people, caring for people by observation, how they're doing.
The Habit Finder is a great assessment, and the reason I love it and I chose to integrate it into my practice is it measures behavior, not personality. It gives leaders a baseline in 6 different areas. So when we look at the habits within our inner world and our outer world, we can get into a great conversation. I don't like using the words strength and weakness. I think there's negative connotation. I like to frame it in a discussion during a debrief when someone takes the assessment. Where do you over focus?
Mm.
Oh, this is where you over focus. Here's how much you do it, and let's talk about why.
Mm.
So it uses the neuroscience element of deductive reasoning, and that shows me where someone will use intrinsic thinking that I spoke of. Where do you put people first? Where do you don't, and why? Where are you an extrinsic thinker? So extrinsic is anything material. It's our house, our car, the tree on the front lawn. People get very easily swayed to be an extrinsic thinker when they've been told or mentored that leadership is attached to status and things. Systematic thinkers are the CEOs or C-suite leaders who have had that modeling of, Vivian, I pay you this salary, go do your job, what's the problem? Or, why didn't you meet the target of X this month and what's going on? When things like that present themselves and you're a systematic thinker, I don't see it as a negative. I see it as an opportunity to have meaningful alignment and a beautiful conversation.
Mm.
That's when we can lead with heart-centered leadership, be intrinsic, and say, Vivian, I can see this is going on today. Come and have a coffee. I want to be approachable. And what's going on in your world and how can I help?
Mm. You know what? I did the habit finder assessment 20 minutes before our meeting, and then I got it converted into the PDF file also, and it's very beautiful, and in the online version compared to the PDF file, because we can click on the result and see the objective and our habits, and it made me to realize there's a lot in here that I need to make improvements on.
Well, I'll have to have a look when we're done, and we'll have to have another chat.
Yeah, and then it also say that you can book your calendar for 15 minutes to go over that. So I'll definitely will book that with you, Deborah, to see. Again, I see it's opportunities for improvement, for learning, and for fine tuning ourselves. Nobody is perfect, so it's good to know our areas of imperfections to make improvements, right?
Absolutely. Good for you.
Thank you, Deborah. I would like to know, the next is anything exciting that you are about to do or you are doing, because we understand that you are on the solo writing your own book at the moment, and where's the process for that, and what else exciting that you want to share with Vivian and I and the audience?
Well, I just celebrated at my commencement last night. I just finished a beautiful creative workshop with Seth Godin.
Oh.
And it was my precursor to setting up the discipline and structure for my own book. I've been working on my own book for 3 years, only to realize that I've been writing 2 books at the same time. So I am coming to, at the end of this month, we're finishing season 2 of my podcast, Imperfect, the Heart-Centered Leadership Podcast. I'm going to, I go dark in June, and then we'll recommence with season 3. And we are going to hit 200 leaders when we start season 3. So that's super exciting. I'm going to start working with a professor from Georgetown University on my book. And I have a lot of it written, but I need to take a step back to see what I have and separate the 2 books. I will have my first book's on leadership. I will have the manuscript done by November, and I will have it out to the world by next March. And that's what I'm working on right now.
Wow, big congratulations. We'll get back to you by November and see how's how's everything actually is at that point, okay? And when the book is out, please let Vivian and I know so that we can order copies to our children, because we always encourage our kids to read, and definitely we will order some for our best friends also and their kids also. All right.
I will do that.
And Deborah, thank you so much for joining our program and sharing your story with us. There is one last question, and this question is asked by one of my best friend also, and then he asked you to if there is one question that you, because you are a deep thinker yourself, and if there is one question that you've been asking ever since, what is that question that Deborah been asking your own self every day though?
Very easy. It's part of my daily morning routine, and it's how can I better serve the world?
How can you better serve the world? Wow. Yep. Tomorrow, Vivian and I, when we wake up, we will have our white space. Why? I know it.
White space.
White space.
That's space in the calendar for you and Vivian to think together, but also think on your own. Very important.
Absolutely. We will practice that, and then we will share with you in 30 days how the progress has been with our white space and the question that we put on to ask ourselves on that, that moment of quiet and finding our own answers. So thank you so much for teaching us and for doing the great things that you are doing. I definitely will get back to you on our on my habit finder results and ask for your advice on how we can be able to leverage our strength, and also to learn from our areas of imperfections so that we can improve in the future. Meanwhile, I also will share that with in our communities so that people can see the areas that they need to be focusing on, so that they can become better bosses, better managers, better leaders, and yet just be better father or or mother, better sons or better daughter, and that's it. All right.
And that's a great space to be. So good for you for, I call it doing a bit of a cognitive inventory of where have we come from, where are we right now in this present moment, and where do we go to? And I think if we give that daily gift of self-audit to ourselves, we're really honoring who we are as people. And I think it just expands what I like to call our emotional bandwidth to be better heart-centered leaders.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for the chance to meet up today. And if ever you travel to our country, please let us know. Vio and I will be so honored to take you and your family around town, all right?
Well, thank you. And congratulations on creating your program, your show, to bring a little light, in your section of the world, because we're continuing to navigate hard times, but we always have the control to do it in a heart-centered way so that we can still be better every day. So really glad our paths crossed, and so much fun being with you today.
So much fun being with you today too. Thank you very much. You have a nice day there, all right, Deborah?
You too, guys.
Yes. Yeah.
Take care.
You take
Bye-bye.
care. Bye bye.
Take